morning, wildlife. How you guys doing this morning? Awake? Good. Hey, that is good to hear. By a show of hands, who's already started school? Yeah. Who started? Keep your hand raised if you started like last Thursday. I think a lot of people did, right? Did anyone start like last Wednesday? Okay, no. And then what? Just like shout out. What did you guys do on Thursday and Friday for school? Nothing. All right, that's fair. Hey, who starts school? Who starts school tomorrow? All right, what school is it? Shout it out. What school? Heritage, Faith. Cody's saying Moore Park. All right, spelled backwards. Crap room. I have a lot of exciting stuff we're going to talk about this morning. I'm excited. But before we head into that, I have a question. It's an easy question. All I want you guys to do is raise your hand if you want to answer this question. I'll choose you. You'll say your name loud and proud, and then you get to answer the question. As school is approaching, for some of us, it's already here. What is the worst class ever? Not like, I hate this teacher. No, like, what's the worst, like, subject in your opinion? For me, and I want you guys to give a reason why. For me, I would say math. Math is my least favorite. Numbers confuse me. And then they add letters to it, and I just freak out. So go ahead, raise your hand. What's your least favorite subject? I want to clarify one thing. This is not a time to, like, make fun of your teacher. Not talking about your teacher. Talking about the subject and why you don't like it as much. Let's go with our new friend in the back. Tell everyone your name one more time. That's an awesome name. I love it. So what is your least favorite subject? History. Did anyone else agree? History? Okay. Hey, I want to know. Hold on. Why is history your least favorite subject? Is it because it's in the past and we should leave it in the past? What's your reason? Okay. Sure. Yeah. That's true. It's a bummer sometimes, but it is important because history does repeat itself. Let's go right here. Our friend in the black t-shirt with Baby Yoda, or otherwise known as Grogu. When they named him Grogu, I was like, that's his name? Okay. All right, so tell everyone your name, my friend. Jonathan Gomez. Everyone, let's give it up for Jonathan Gomez with the Grogu t-shirt. I love it. I love Mandalorian. Can't wait for the next season. What is your least favorite subject? Science. Oh, now I want to know. Hold on, Jonathan Gomez, which I love. You say your full name every time. I love that. All right, Jonathan. What is it about science? I want to get down a little closer. What is it about science that's your least favorite? Science tests. Enough said. I love it. Let's go right here. I want to see which one do you think I'm pointing at. Someone just start talking. Sadie. Okay. You looked very confused. Sadie, tell everyone your name. Awesome. Sadie, what's your least favorite subject and why? Okay. Yeah. 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 It's as if time continues, right? What's that about, right? Time, right? Thank you, Sadie. Let's go with one more. Who has a good one? Oh, this is so. Hold on. She got hit in the head with a frisbee earlier. So I feel bad. So tell everyone your name loud and proud. Sarah, I just want to know, did you like try to catch the frisbee? You were just standing there and Jonathan Ponce just threw it at you? Wow. I'm joking. It's a joke. All right, sorry. I'm sorry. It's a joke. Tell everyone your name loud and proud. Sarah, did I already ask you that? I don't know. I had coffee. So Sarah, what's your least favorite subject and why? English because it's hard and boring. Does anyone else agree? Okay. All right. Hey, I know for me, English was pretty hard in middle school. And then one day I woke up and I said, I speak it. I should learn it. Uh, hey, anyway, if you have a school subject that you maybe hate or you dislike, I would love to hear it afterwards. Afterwards. Hey, but all jokes aside, hey, school is important. I know for some of us in this room, like myself, I don't love school. Tests give me anxiety and they freak me out sometimes, but it's still super important. So make sure you guys are trying your absolute best with school, whether it's English, history, math, science, PE. Whatever it is. All right. So, hey, as we jump into this time, a couple different things. Number one, make sure you guys grab that message note sheet. It was sitting, it was somewhere on your chair as you guys came in. Go ahead and pull those out. If you do not have one, we would love to get you one. So if you don't have one, just raise your hand ever so slightly, and a staff will come by and bring you a message note sheet. This is a great tool to follow along as we head into this time of teaching. Now, for anyone that's brand new, this is not a test, it is not a quiz. We are not trying to trick you in any way. There's going to be some fill in the blanks on the front and the back of these note sheets. This is a way just to follow along and hopefully learn along as we discover what it means to share our faith with other people. So there's going to be some fill in the blanks on that note sheet, and the fill ins are going to be on the screen throughout this time. It'll be up there for a little while, so don't worry that you're not going to get it. So take your time, make sure you have those, because I'm sure all your parents would love to learn what you are learning about in wildlife. So, anyway, we are starting a brand new series this weekend called Repost, where we're going to be looking at how all of us in this room have the opportunity to share our faith in Jesus with those people, maybe at our school, on our sports team, in our homeroom, that typically don't know Jesus, don't read the Bible, maybe never have gone to church before. This series is designed to help all of us in this room understand why it is so important to share Jesus with other people, as well as how we can do it. So, next week, we're going to look at the how. This weekend, we're going to look at the why. Why should we share Jesus with other people? And the reason we're doing this is because not this Wednesday, the following Wednesday, August 23rd, it's on your note sheet at the top. We are going to be having our fall kickoff, which is a great opportunity for everyone in this room to get connected in wildlife, but also it's a great opportunity for you to invite a friend from school, a homeroom, from a sports team, your neighbor who you know is in middle school. It's a great opportunity to invite them to church, maybe for the very first time. So as we jump into this time, let's go ahead and pray and we'll get started. So Jesus, thank you so much for this time. Man, Jesus, I'm excited. What an awesome summer we had. But as we go into this fall season, would you continue to remind us that you're always with us? You're always surrounding our thoughts. You're always for us. Would you help us understand what it means to share who you are with other people? We love you. We thank you. It's in your name we all said, amen. Hey, I want to invite you guys to do something for me. Everyone, stand on up where you're at. You don't have to go anywhere. Just stand on up where you're at. I know it's early in the morning and some of us would rather be at home sleeping or having a smoothie or something. So everyone, where you're at, stand on up. You're not going to do anything besides just standing there. So I see some of you are like mentally preparing to stand, which you're 12. What are you doing? Um, so stand on up. So here's the thing, everyone in this room, listen up. So I need everyone to stay standing if and only if you have heard these words or phrases. So, for example, if you hear what I'm about to say and you have no idea what that is, that's okay. That's okay. Just go ahead and take a seat. All right. I just want to see something. So, if you are familiar with a word or a phrase I'm about to say, keep on standing. All right. Number one, here we go. Inviting someone to church. If you've heard that phrase before or the idea of it, stay standing. All right. Number two, sharing your faith. If you've never heard that before, take a seat. But if you have, stay standing. Number three, spreading the gospel. All right, cool. And number four, this is where last night, Saturday night, a lot of people sat down. Number four, evangelism. All right, all of you can go ahead and take a seat. It's funny, some of you reacted like I just made that word up. I didn't. It's a real word. I like how all of you are like, you guys are like batting like you were like, I don't know, Hank Aaron in the World Series or something. You're like, oh, I got this. And then I come to that fourth word and you're like, what the? They tricked me. Hey, well, regardless, when we hear these types of phrases, these words, like sharing our faith with others, inviting people to church, spreading the gospel, but when we hear this phrase or this word evangelism, a lot of us in this room might be confused by it. Maybe you've heard of that word, but you don't really understand what that means. Well, evangelism is basically a fancy word for sharing Jesus with other people that don't know who Jesus is. Evangelism is one of those things in a church environment that's kind of like a weird concept. It's kind of like makes some Christians feel a little bit uneasy. For example, I think for some of us in this room, we can all agree that when we hear phrases like this, follow Jesus, some of us in this room are like, yeah, that sounds awesome. Or read my Bible every single day. I love reading my Bible. Or for some of us, just listening to the Bible. Turn my life around. Oh, you bet. I want to follow Jesus. Tell someone about Jesus. Now, some of us in this room might hear that and go, ooh, I don't know. I don't know about that. Maybe for some of us in this room, we're thinking, I'm not sure if now is the right time to do that. Or maybe some of us in this room, we hear that and we have an opportunity to share Jesus with other people. And our immediate response is like, I think that's someone else's job. Like, I don't think that's my job to share Jesus with other people. And I think this is where we have some tension sometimes. I think the reality is sharing our faith in Jesus with other people that don't go to church, maybe are of a different religion. It can be really, really hard to share Jesus with other people. And I think even more so, it's easier to often talk ourselves out of sharing Jesus or sharing our faith with other people. And what we're going to look at this morning is we're going to look at three different reasons on why I think that we typically don't share Jesus with other people. And if you kind of like fit under one of these reasons, I want to let you know that that is totally normal. There's nothing wrong with you. You didn't do anything wrong. But what we need to understand is these three reasons are really not good enough to justify that we then shouldn't share Jesus with other people. So if you have your note sheet with you, go ahead and pull those out. And the first fill in on your note sheet is this on the screen. Write this down. Number one, the first reason is fear. Fear. I think for some of us in this room, we get really scared about the idea of sharing Jesus with other people. And I'm sure we can list off so many different reasons why we are scared. But I think the big reason is it's just scary because you're putting yourself out there. What if they make fun of you? What if they reject you or start calling you names? Or what if they think differently of you? Maybe you have a friend at school that you know doesn't know Jesus, you know doesn't go to church, or thinks Christianity is stupid. And you might be fearful of you then being classified at school as that's the weird church kid, or that's the weird Jesus kid that everyone is talking about. Because I know for me, when I was in middle school, I was pretty scared about sharing Jesus with other people. One of the main reasons is I was fearful of misrepresenting who Jesus is to other people. You see, our lives as Christians are designed to reflect who Jesus is to other people. And if I'm living my life in a bad way and people know that I'm a Christian and people see that, then I'm misrepresenting who Jesus is. And another reason, too, I was incredibly scared that the moment people find out that I'm a Christian and then they ask me a very hard Bible question or a question about God, I was fearful that I would get that answer wrong. And then people will go like, see, all these Christians are all the same. So I think our first reason why we often don't share our faith in Jesus with others is we're just scared. It's kind of scary to do that, but we'll talk about this a little bit later. Number two, write this down. Evangelism feels judgmental. Evangelism feels judgmental. Now, again, evangelism is a fancy word meaning you are sharing Jesus with other people, what he's done in your life, how he has saved you from sin. And I think that word sin, for some of us, maybe we are confused about that word. Maybe if we're brand new, we've heard of this word sin, and we know that's a very church sounding word. But all that sin is that it is rebelling against God. And Jesus came, like we talked about at camp, Jesus came to pay all of the debt, all of the sin in our lives so that we could belong to God once again. Now, for us in this room to follow Jesus, we have to wrestle with some stuff that we are not proud of, some stuff in our lives that we are maybe kind of shamed of. And some of that stuff is sin, and your entire life is following Jesus and Jesus highlighting some sin in your life and how he wants to get rid of it. And the reality is, for us to share Jesus with other people, for those that are not following Jesus, they are living a life of sin. And oftentimes, they don't even realize it because they're not realizing the sin in their life. How all of us, in one moment or another, have all rebelled against God. And evangelism oftentimes feels judgmental because when people are not following Jesus, they are living a life of sin. That's what the Bible teaches. And for us as Christians, we are highlighting to them, like, hey, you're not living the way God designed you to live, but Jesus has a much better way. And I think oftentimes when we share that with other people, they can feel that we are judging them, which I know for all of us in this room, we don't want to come off as judging someone, but that's sometimes the reality. So we're kind of fearful that we might come off as judging. So that's number two. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Now, number three is simply this: we just don't know how. We just don't know how to share Jesus with other people. Now, we're going to talk about more of this next week, but it's super important. So, number three, we'll come back to next week on how all of us in this room, sixth, seventh, and eighth grader, how we can easily share who Jesus is, what he has done in your life to other people. So, that's number three. But here's the truth that I think for a lot of us, we tend to talk our way, we talk ourselves out of sharing Jesus with others because that's a lot easier to, right? When you know someone at school is not a Christian, but they're one of your best friends and you would love to see them at Wildlife. But you're a little scared because you know how they are, and maybe they're kind of judgmental or they get easily offended. And the moment you start sharing Jesus with them is the moment they might just start making fun of you, and you're a little fearful. And that's totally normal. But the reasons why we tend to not share Jesus with other people, if we look at these excuses, we'll see that they don't really add up. That the excuses we tend to make, whether we're scared, whether we don't know how, which you can learn how, we'll talk about that next week, but the excuses we make typically aren't a good enough reason not to share Jesus with other people. So, what I want to do with the rest of our time is I want to unpack two out of these three reasons. Again, number three we'll look at next week, but let's look again at the first one: fear. So, fear oftentimes is one of those things that sharing Jesus with other people is just scary. It scares you just to think about that because maybe for you, when I was in middle school, I was very shy. I was incredibly shy. Just like talking to anyone, I wanted to just like crawl in a hole and cry. Like I was just very shy. And if you're shy, there is nothing wrong with you. That's totally normal. But fear is not a good enough reason not to share Jesus with other people. And the reason I share that in Matthew chapter 28, it's actually on your note sheet. We see that Jesus hangs out with his disciples for one of the very last times before he goes back and ascends into heaven. And this is what it says. Matthew 28:16-17 says, Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshiped him, but some doubted. You see, there were followers of Jesus that doubted that Jesus actually rose from the dead. That one time Jesus was dead, and 3 days later, he rised from the dead. Some of his followers believed that to be true, but some doubted. And what I want you to catch with this is that oftentimes, just because you doubt, just because you are fearful, doesn't mean you should then not share Jesus with other people. You see, these couple of verses was right before Jesus told his disciples to go to the entire world, every nation, and tell them who I am and how I love them and how they're living a life of sin, and I have a better way for them to live. You see, some doubted, some were scared, and yet that didn't stop them from sharing Jesus with other people. There is this guy, and I want to make sure I get his name right, Nelson Mandela. He was the former president of South Africa, which is very fancy. I've never been a president. And he said this regarding fear and courage and all this. It'll be on the screen for us. It says this: I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. You see, I think some of us think for us not to live a life of fear means we just never ever have fear. Like having fear is weakness. No, I think having fear, but living your life despite the fear, is what Jesus calls us to. Like, what if we all treated fear like this? Like, all of us in this room, we did not give up what Jesus is calling us to because we're fearful. If anything, we actually do what Jesus has called us to, because if you were to read the entire Bible or just portions of it, you would see there are so many different people in the Bible that were scared, that were fearful, and yet they still did what God called them to do. So that's fear. It's not a good enough reason not to share Jesus with other people, but it can be scary. But we'll learn this a little bit later. But Jesus is always with us despite our fear. And then number two, evangelism feels judgmental. Oftentimes, when we are sharing Jesus with other people, we might be afraid that we're coming off judging other people, or we're fearful that they are just judging us. And this is a tough one. This is a tough one to handle. But Jesus said this in Luke 19:10. It'll be on the screen and on your note sheet. Jesus said he came into this world to do two things: to seek, which means to find, to seek and to save the lost. Which, if this is true, Jesus is saying that everyone is lost, and Jesus came to find them and to rescue them. We kind of talked about that at camp last weekend. But if this is true, this is a big part of evangelism. This is a big part of sharing Jesus with other people, which means if someone in your life doesn't know Jesus, that means they are lost. It means that they need a savior. They need to be rescued. And part of our journey is to help everyone understand, hey, Jesus loves you. He cares about you. And he wants you to follow him. And yeah, sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes it's actually hard. But Jesus promises he'll always be with us. And everyone's journey is a little bit different. You see, some people have been following Jesus for many, many, many years. And others have just been following Jesus maybe for a week since camp last week, or a couple weeks, or a couple months. Everyone's journey with Jesus is different. But as we look at these reasons of why we typically don't share Jesus with other people, we'll understand more that those are not good enough reasons not to share Jesus. Because if we're being honest, as we look at these reasons and we kind of unpack them a little bit more, we'll go, man, okay, just because I'm scared, fear is not a good enough reason not to share Jesus with other people. And then feeling judgmental, it's like, well, we're not trying to judge other people, but we want other people to come and experience how awesome Jesus is. And sometimes that takes time for people to understand, man, they need Jesus. So what I want to illustrate us for a second, I think for some of us in this room, we'll kind of do a like us versus them kind of mentality. That for us in this room who are maybe a Christian, or maybe you are here and you're still checking out Jesus and that's awesome, you have questions. I think for some of us in this room, for those that are here, we think of it as an us who are in this room versus a them who are out there. And we are kind of thinking those that are for us that are in here versus those that are out there. So to illustrate it, so think of it like this. For us that are here, we're like here on the stage or here on your seat. And for those that aren't following Jesus or don't typically go to church because they don't know, let's picture them like at the door over there, right? So for us in this room, we that are here are asking the question, how can we get those people over here into this room to experience who Jesus is in an awesome community, an impossible shot, all these awesome things? How can we do those things? And I think for some of us in this room, we kind of get comfortable with this idea of like, yeah, those people, they're over there and I'm over here. In here is safe and over there is scary and that's okay. And then we don't do anything about the reality is that those people out there that don't know Jesus are lost. And Jesus is calling every single person in this room to go and share Jesus with them so that Jesus can then save them. But maybe for some of us in this room, that's really natural just to share Jesus. It becomes very easy because you're just naturally just wired like that. And maybe for some of us in this room, we're kind of wired as kind of maybe we're a little more fearful. We're a little more scared to share Jesus for whatever reason. And we just hope, man, I hope they come over here. But we never talk to them about it or we never extend an invitation. Like if you were throwing a party and you wanted someone to come to the party, you would probably invite them personally. Maybe it's with like an evite, or maybe it's at school and you're handing out flyers and it's a birthday party and you want this person to come. If you don't go up to them and invite them, how are they going to know about the party that is being thrown? You see, I think we see an us versus them mentality. But the question here is like for the people that are here in this room, what are we to do? How can we live out what we're talking about to get those people over there into this room right here? Well, there's three easy action steps, pretty practical baby steps, so to speak, on the back of your note sheet. So do me a favor, on the back of your note sheet, write this down. Number one, keep chasing after Jesus yourself. Keep chasing after Jesus yourself. You know, there's an old saying, and I had to write it down to make sure I got it right. It says this: you can't lead anyone you can't lead anyone else further than you have gone yourself. So, what that's talking about is that for you to invite someone to church, to wildlife for the very first time, in inviting them to follow Jesus, but you know yourself, you're not following Jesus like Jesus wants you to, reading your Bible every day, praying to God, making awesome friends here in wildlife, loving other people. If you're inviting someone into this, but you're not doing that yourself, the challenge for all of us is to keep chasing after Jesus yourself. So that's number one. Number two, write this down. Be able to share what Jesus is doing in your life. Be able to share what Jesus is doing in your life. You see, all of us in this room, we have an opportunity. If you are a Christian, a follower of Jesus, you have said yes to Jesus, you are now his, you belong to Jesus. And a great way to share Jesus with other people is to share your experience with Jesus. 1 Peter 3:15, it's actually on your note sheet at the bottom of this point. It says this: and if someone asks about your hope as a believer, your relationship with Jesus, always be ready to explain it. Always be ready to explain it. When you have experienced something awesome, you want to tell other people about that, right? For example, you've gone on a roller coaster or a ride at Disneyland and you can't wait to tell people about it, right? You'll go into every single detail. You'll talk about what the ride is like, your experience from it. You can't help but tell people about it. Or like an epic piece of food you just had. You're like, oh my gosh, this is like the best thing ever. They just opened a Raising Cane's in the valley, and oh my gosh, their chicken is almost as good as Chick-fil-A, but it's still really good, right? When we experience something, we can't help but share our experience with other people. So when someone asks you a question like, hey, why do you follow Jesus? You don't have to go into like great detail and like this whole like double spaced 5 paragraph essay. No, just share your experience with Jesus. It's like, oh man, well, Jesus, man, he just reminds me that I'm never alone. That could be super powerful, but very simple. So, number 3, write this down. Pray for people who aren't here yet. Pray for people that aren't here yet. You know, prayer is powerful. Prayer is simply just talking to God about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and everything in between. And Jesus invites us to pray to him, to talk to him, which is awesome. And he invites us to ask things of him. Sometimes he answers those, but sometimes he answers those in a way that we cannot even imagine, a much better way. So, is there someone in your life, one person that you're thinking about right now that's at your school, a sports team, a club, your homeroom, maybe a neighbor that you know is in middle school, but maybe they go to a different school? Who is someone, one person in your life that you can be praying for that aren't here right now that they would then get here? And maybe for you, our fall kickoff is a great opportunity to invite them to church for the very first time. You could talk about how, man, there's this group of people that just really just are awesome. They're just awesome to be around. And there's going to be goats at this fall kickoff. And maybe one of your friends love goats because they played Goat Simulator and they're like, a goat, you say? I want to play with a goat. Goats are cool. I want to pet. When I was a kid, this is off topic. When I was a kid, I went to this petting zoo, as you do. And what do you do at a petting zoo? Pet the zoo. You pet the animals. I went up to this goat. I was like, oh my gosh, it's such a cute goat. And then on my Blues Clues, which I don't know if you know that show, on my Blues Clues t-shirt, which was awesome, just threw up right there on me. And I was like, thank you for that, Mr. Goat. Anyway, so maybe for you, you can invite someone and pray for someone to come to Wildlife that's not here. Now, as we wrap up this time, here's the big thing I want you guys to remember. The big thing. Write this down. The big thing. If you don't remember anything, remember this one thing. Write this down. If you're looking for a reason not to share your faith, you'll probably find one. If you're looking for a reason on why you don't want to share your faith with other people, you'll probably find a reason. And as we talked about this morning, the reasons you have to not share Jesus with other people oftentimes are not a good enough reason. So if you're looking for a reason, you'll probably find one. As the band comes up, I want to read a passage of the Bible that we'll talk about more next week. And as we talked about a little bit earlier, Jesus rises from the dead, reconnects with his followers. He gives them some incredible instruction. And Jesus is saying, like, hey, I'm going away. I'm going away. But I'm going to return in a little while. You don't know when. But as I go away, I want to remind you of some things and to challenge you in some certain areas. So, if you want to do me a favor, on the screen, there's this passage, Matthew chapter 28, starting at verse 18. Jesus says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. You see, Jesus invites all of us to extend an invitation, inviting people to church to experience who Jesus is. And what I love about this passage is that Jesus says, I will always be with you to the very end of time. That's a nice reminder for myself, too, is that no matter how much fear I have, Jesus is always going to be with me. So, not this Wednesday, but the next Wednesday, August 23rd, we have our fall kickoff, which is a great opportunity for everyone in this room to invite someone to wildlife for the very first time. Now, next weekend, we're going to unpack and talk about how can we share our faith with other people. But maybe for you right now, you have someone in your life that you're thinking about. There's one name that comes to mind that you really want to invite to wildlife. You know, a simple way to invite someone to church is simply just to make the ask. And if they say no, you did nothing wrong. But you keep making that ask and just inviting them to wildlife. Let's go and pray. Jesus, thank you so much for this time. We ask that you would just continue to be with us and for us so that we can invite other people to wildlife, so they can understand how awesome and how epic you are. Man, we love you. We thank you. Would you give everyone in this room that's feeling maybe a little scared about sharing who you are with others and inviting them to church, would you just give them peace, give them courage, knowing that you are always with them? It's in your name we all said, amen. Hey guys, stand on up. I'm going to invite you a little forward. Let's go into this last song.